No, that's not possible. We were supposed to meet today. We were supposed to use the money today. Chinedu, why would you do this to me? For 15 years, I pushed that wheelbarrow from morning until night. For 15 years, I suffered under the hot sun because I believed my future would be better. Every week, every month, every single coin I saved, I placed in your hands because I trusted you. When you had no job, I fed you, Chinedu. When you couldn't pay your bills, I helped you. When people laughed at you, I stood beside you. When everybody turned their backs on you, I stood beside you. I never hid anything from you because I trusted you with everything I had. And today we're supposed to be my happiest day ever. But despite everything I did for you, and this is the way you want to pay me back, Chinedu. I swear with my life, no matter where you are, you will regret this for the rest of your life.
Long before that heartbreaking moment, there was a time when nobody in the neighborhood could separate Emeka and Chinedu. Everywhere they went, people saw them together. If someone saw Emeka, they expected Chinedu to be nearby. If they saw Chinedu, they assumed Emeka was not far away. They ate together, laughed together, shared their struggles, and supported each other through difficult times. Many people even believed they were brothers because of how close they were. They were not related by blood, but their friendship was so strong that it felt stronger than family. Sadly, some of the deepest wounds in life come from the people we trust the most. 15 years earlier, life was far from easy for either of them. Emeka owned almost nothing except an old rusty wheelbarrow and a dream that refused to die. Every morning before sunrise, while most people were still sleeping comfortably in their homes, he was already walking toward the market. Day after day, he pushed heavy loads through crowded streets, carrying bags of rice, cement, vegetables, and anything else customers were willing to pay him to transport. The work was exhausting. The hot sun burned his skin, his hands became rough and covered with blisters, and by evening his entire body ached. Yet no matter how difficult life became, he never allowed himself to complain because every painful day brought him one step closer to the future he imagined. While Emeka spent his days working harder than most people around him, Chinedu was fighting a different battle. Unlike Emeka, he had completed his education and believed that a good job would soon follow. His family expected success. His friends expected success. Even him expected success. But things were going different way. Every interview ended in disappointment. Every opportunity slipped away. Slowly, hope began turning into frustration. People who once encouraged him started avoiding him. Others mocked him behind his back. Some openly called him a failure. As his confidence disappeared, one person remained by his side through everything. That person was Emeka. Whenever Chinedu was hungry, Emeka shared his food. Whenever rent became a problem, Emeka contributed what little money he had. Whenever Chinedu felt hopeless and wanted to give up, Emeka reminded him that difficult seasons never last forever. Even though Emeka was struggling for his own life, he always found a way to support his friend. There were times when he returned from work completely exhausted, yet he still worried about whether Chinedu had eaten that day. Their friendship became stronger with every challenge they faced together. To Emeka, Chinedu was no longer just a friend. He was family. One evening, after returning from another long day at the market, Emeka sat outside with Chinedu and began talking about the future. The sky was turning orange as the dag were turning dark, and tha was the time. He explained the dream that kept him pushing forward every day. He told Chinedu that he wanted to stop pushing a wheelbarrow one day and own transportation vehicles instead. He wanted to build a business, create jobs for others, and eventually build a house he could proudly call his own. Most people would have laughed at such a dream, especially coming from a poor wheelbarrow pusher, but Chinedu listened to him. The more Emeka spoke, the more obvious it became that this was not just a fantasy. He had a plan, and he was willing to sacrifice everything to achieve it. From that day forward, Emeka became even more serious about saving money. While other people spent their earnings on temporary pleasures, he focused on the future. He avoided unnecessary spending, wore old clothes for years, and continued working through pain and exhaustion. Every coin mattered. Every naira had a purpose. Slowly, his savings began growing. The progress was not fast, but it was steady. Year after year, he remained disciplined. No matter how hard life became, he never stopped believing that one day his sacrifices would pay off. Then something happened that changed the direction of his life. A nearby family was robbed, and a large amount of money was stolen from their home. The incident frightened many people in the neighborhood, including Emeka. For days, he worried about where to keep the money he had worked so hard to save. The amount was becoming too large to leave carelessly, and he needed someone he could trust with the money. In his mind, there was only one person worthy of that trust. Chinedu. One evening, Emeka approached his friend with a simple request. He asked if Chinedu could help him keep his savings safe until the day he was ready to use them. Chinedu looked surprised and asked whether he truly trusted him with that responsibility. Without hesitation, Emeka smiled and told him that he was more than a friend. He was a brother. Those words carried enormous weight. From that moment forward, a new routine began. Every week, Emeka handed over part of his savings. Every month, he added more. As the years passed, the amount continued growing, and whenever he asked about the money, Chinedu always reassured him that everything was safe. Time continued moving forward. The years of hard work slowly piled up behind Emeka. What began as a small dream eventually started feeling possible. The amount he had saved continued increasing, and with every passing year, he moved closer to the future he had imagined for so long. Even when life became difficult, he found comfort in knowing that his sacrifices were building something meaningful. More importantly, he never worried about the money because he believed it was in the hands of the one person who would never betray him. Eventually, 15 years of hard work stood behind him. 15 years of pushing a wheelbarrow. 15 years of waking up before sunrise. 15 years of carrying other people's burdens while quietly building a future of his own. After carefully calculating everything, Emeka finally realized that the money should be enough. Enough to buy a transportation vehicle. Even to purchase a piece of land, after buying the vehicle. And even enough to begin the next chapter of his life. Then he became excited beyond words. He met with Chinedu and shared the news. The two friends spent hours discussing plans, opportunities, and possibilities. By the end of the conversation, they agreed that the following morning they would finally go and use the money. That night was one of the happiest nights of Emeka's life. For years he had dreamed about this exact moment, and now it was finally within reach. He lay awake in bed imagining what his future would look like. He pictured himself driving his own vehicle instead of pushing a wheelbarrow. He imagined buying land, building a house, and finally escaping the cycle of poverty that had followed him for most of his life. Every time he closed his eyes, excitement forced them open again. Sleep refused to come because his mind was already living in tomorrow. When morning finally arrived, Emeka jumped out of bed with excitement. His heart was filled with hope and joy, as he prepared for what he believed would be the most important day of his life. After 15 years of sacrifice, suffering, discipline, and patience, he believed his breakthrough had finally arrived. Smiling from ear to ear, he left his house and began walking toward Chinedu's home, completely unaware that within the next few minutes, everything he believed about trust, friendship, and loyalty was about to be tested in the most painful way imaginable.
If you're really enjoying this video so far, consider subscribing to my small channel. My boyfriend promised to take me out if I hit 1,000 subscribers, and that would mean the whole world to me. Thanks for listening this far.
The excitement that filled Emeka's heart disappeared the moment he arrived at Chinedu's house. The front door was locked. The windows were shut. The entire place felt strangely empty. At first, he was not worried. He assumed Chinedu had stepped out for a few minutes and would return shortly. After all, this was supposed to be the biggest day of their lives. They had spent the previous evening discussing plans for the future, talking about vehicles, land, and the opportunities that were finally within reach. But as the minutes passed and nobody answered the door, a feeling of uneasiness slowly began creeping into his heart. Something felt wrong, although he could not yet explain why. While standing there, a neighbor walked by and noticed him waiting outside. The expression on the man's face immediately made Emeka uncomfortable. Before he could even ask a question, the neighbor quietly informed him that Chinedu had left the country the previous day. For a moment, Emeka simply stared at him. The words made no sense. Just yesterday they had been planning their future together. Just yesterday they had agreed to meet this morning and finally use the money he had spent 15 years saving. Surely there had to be some mistake. But deep inside, a terrible fear was already beginning to grow. It was the kind of fear that appears when your heart knows the truth before your mind is willing to accept it. Immediately, Emeka pulled out his phone and began calling Chinedu. The call failed. He tried again. Nothing. Again and again he dialed the number, hoping to hear his friend's voice, but every attempt ended the same way. Soon he began calling everyone who knew Chinedu. Friends. Relatives. Former classmates. Anyone who might have information. Nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew how to contact him. Nobody could explain why he had suddenly disappeared without saying a word. As the hours passed, the terrible reality became impossible to ignore. Chinedu was gone. And the money was gone with him. That evening, Emeka sat alone outside his room as darkness slowly covered the neighborhood. The pain he felt was impossible to describe. It was not only about the money. Yes, 15 years of savings had disappeared overnight, but what truly broke his heart was the betrayal itself. The person responsible was not a stranger. It was not a thief. It was not a criminal hiding in the shadows. It was the man he had trusted more than anyone else in the world. The man he had fed when he had nothing. The man he had supported through years of struggle. The man he proudly called his brother. That realization hurt far more than the financial loss ever could. The days that followed were some of the darkest of Emeka's life. He stopped talking to people. He stopped making plans. He stopped dreaming about the future. Every morning he woke up hoping that somehow there had been a misunderstanding, but reality greeted him every single day. Sometimes he sat for hours staring at his old wheelbarrow. Other times he simply remained inside his room, replaying every memory he shared with Chinedu and wondering how everything had gone so wrong. Friends tried comforting him. Neighbors offered encouragement. But nothing seemed capable of easing the pain. It felt as though 15 years of hard work had been erased in a single moment. Months passed, and slowly something began changing inside him. One afternoon, while looking at the same wheelbarrow that had supported him for years, he realized something important. Chinedu had stolen his savings, but he had not stolen his ability to work. He had taken the money, but he had not taken the discipline, determination, and patience that had helped him earn it in the first place. The dream was damaged, but it was not dead. For the first time in many months, a small spark of hope returned. It was not a large spark. It was not enough to erase the pain. But it was enough to make him stand up again. The following morning, Emeka returned to the market and grabbed the handles of his wheelbarrow once more. Some people felt sorry for him. Others quietly admired his courage. A few even laughed behind his back. But none of that mattered. He had already survived the worst thing he could imagine. From that day forward, he started rebuilding his life one step at a time. Every coin was carefully saved. Every expense was recorded. Every decision was made with caution. Years passed, and little by little, the impossible began becoming possible again. The man who had once lost everything slowly began creating a new future for himself. 5 years later, Emeka finally achieved what he had dreamed about for so long. He purchased his first transport vehicle. The day it arrived, he stood beside it silently, remembering the years of suffering that had brought him there. Soon afterward, he purchased a piece of land and began building a house. Then his business continued growing. One vehicle became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 6. Drivers started working for him. Customers respected him. The same people who once pitied him now looked at him with admiration. Through discipline, patience, and relentless effort, Emeka transformed himself from a poor wheelbarrow pusher into a successful businessman. Meanwhile, life was taking a very different direction for Chinedu. After leaving the country with the stolen money, he believed his problems were over. For a short period, everything seemed exciting. He spent money freely and enjoyed a lifestyle he had never experienced before. But easy money rarely brings lasting peace. The same impatience and poor decisions that had pushed him toward betrayal followed him into his new life. Bad investments, dishonest associates, and reckless spending slowly destroyed everything he had stolen. The fortune disappeared faster than he expected, and before long, he found himself facing the same poverty he thought he had escaped. Nearly 10 years after disappearing, Chinedu finally returned home. But he looked nothing like the confident man who had left. His clothes were worn. His face looked older. His body carried the weight of years filled with regret and hardship. One afternoon, he gathered enough courage to visit Emeka's office. Standing outside the building, he felt nervous in a way he had never felt before. Inside was the man whose life he had nearly destroyed. The man who somehow succeeded despite everything. When they finally came face to face, years of memories filled the silence. Chinedu lowered his head and apologized. Then he confessed the truth he had hidden for so long. He admitted that jealousy had poisoned his heart. Instead of celebrating Emeka's success, he had become resentful of it. For years, Emeka had imagined what he would say if this moment ever happened. Yet when it finally arrived, anger was not the strongest emotion he felt. Instead, he saw a broken man standing before him. A man who had sacrificed friendship for greed and ended up losing everything. After listening quietly, Emeka made a decision that surprised even himself. He chose forgiveness. Not because Chinedu deserved it, and not because the betrayal no longer mattered, but because holding on to hatred would only keep the wound alive forever. Their friendship would never return to what it once was, and some scars would always remain. But by choosing forgiveness, Emeka finally found peace. In the end, he learned that people can steal your money, betray your trust, and destroy your plans, but they can never truly take away your future unless you allow them to take your courage as well.
If you truly enjoyed this story, don't just watch and go. Subscribe to this channel and be part of this journey. We drop 2-3 African stories every week. Stories that teach, shock, and open your eyes. Help us grow this channel by liking and share it to someone who need to hear this story. Stay connected. More powerful stories are coming every week.